Hello out there in YouTube land. I see we have some people already. Hello, everybody. Let me double check this live chat because it never works properly. Let's see. Chew. Hello. Thank you for coming tonight. Suck. Oh, unfortunately, Suck, we don't have any guests tonight, but they are coming up very soon. Most likely next Monday, if it works out with their scheduling. I don't want to say for sure because I like to allow people's schedules to determine when the interviews will be. When will it start, Pamela? It is starting right now. And yes, so thank you all for coming. We're going to wait just a couple of minutes and make sure that everybody gets a chance to pop in before I start rambling about things. Yeah, so we're probably not going to do any paranormal news tonight just because I think this video is going to take a long time. I'm not entirely sure, but I think this is going to be kind of a long one. I'll try to hurry up and get through it as fast as possible. And I'm not going to lie, guys, this is kind of a mess. I've tried multiple times to make this video, the one that I'm going to do tonight, and it never works out. For some reason, I cannot fit this content into a video. I was going to do it in the form of a Far Side Fables episode, and there's too much. I can't fit it into one of those. I definitely wouldn't want to make multiple episodes on that one topic. So we're going to try to talk about it tonight. Hopefully that works. Hopefully it makes some kind of sense. Hopefully y'all can hear me. Yeah, so looks like everything's good. Looks like everything is set up. So yeah, welcome to another episode of Paranormally Correct. I am your incredibly frazzled host, Sarah, as always, coming to you live tonight from the basement of the Amityville Horror House. I don't know if that house has a basement, so Lord knows where I'm at. Thank you all for coming. If you're new here for whatever reason, you haven't clicked subscribe and you would like to do so, please go ahead and do that right now. Would really appreciate if you stuck around. Hopefully you enjoy the content. I don't know, maybe you won't. Maybe you won't like it at all. I'm not going to put thoughts in your head. You decide for yourself. But yeah, subscribe. It's not going to hurt anything. So how is everybody doing tonight? Did you all have a good weekend? Hopefully you did. Hopefully you did not get abducted by aliens or eaten by a dog man or flogged by a ghost. Hopefully those things did not happen to you this weekend. If they did, I'm terribly sorry, and I hope you're okay now. What's everybody been up to? I'm going to give it a minute to catch up. I know that we're not on the same time here. I'm like 45 seconds in the future, and you guys are 45 seconds behind me. So give it just a minute to catch up. I'm a little hoarse tonight, so please excuse. Make sure I got everything pulled up here. And I do. I think everything's going good here, technically, on the technical side. I guess we'll go ahead and get started. I feel like I'm not on the ball tonight very well, probably just because I'm so intimidated because this video is going to be so confusing and such a hodgepodge mess, probably, most likely. I wish I could say that it was neat and concise and coherent, but it's probably not. So I apologize. Don't judge me. It's been a rough day. So I'm going to get started with a screen share here in case you guys don't know who I'm talking about, which, how could you not? You may have noticed that the title of the video is referring to Lorraine Warren and Ed Warren. Lorraine just passed away this last Thursday, I believe, Thursday night. It could have been Friday morning. I'm not entirely sure. God rest her soul. I hope she rests in peace, and I hope that she finds what she was always looking for. And that's, in a way, and stick with me on this, guys, because I don't mean this to sound morbid or bad in any way. But I always think, like, when some paranormal enthusiast or paranormal researcher or ghost hunter or whatever else, when they finally cross into the next plane of existence, I'm always just a little bit excited for them, also sad, Of course, I'm sad. It's always sad to lose a person of significance, or just anybody. But I'm always just a little sad, or a little excited rather, for them, because I think, wow, they're finally going to get to experience what it was that they were looking for their whole life. And I don't know, maybe that sounds a little weird. Maybe it sounds logical. It is what it is. If it's weird, it's weird, I guess. But who knows? Who knows what it's like? Definitely not I don't suppose. So this is Ed and Lorraine Warren. You probably know them by now because of all of the Hollywood movies that have been made based on their paranormal cases. Is anybody not familiar with Ed and Lorraine by any chance? Just out of curiosity. Had to leave and come back to here. Oh, chat was messing up, huh? Hopefully everybody can hear me now. Ooh. I don't know. Can you guys just let me know you all can hear me? We may have a technical difficulty. I'll give it just a second. Let me know if you guys can hear me okay, if everything's working properly. Okay, so Pamela, you can hear me? Oh, really? You've never heard of them, Sock? And Alan, you haven't? You're not familiar? Oh, okay. Well, this will be kind of interesting. I hate to be the first person who tells you about them if you've never heard of them at all. Most people know, of course, who they are because of The Conjuring. You guys have probably seen The Conjuring, and I think there's like a Conjuring 2 or something. They've made a movie off the Enfield poltergeist case. They made, let's see, what else? I don't know how many Conjuring. I think there's 2 Conjurings. That's going to bother me now. I kind of like the first Conjuring. It was okay. Then there's Annabelle, and I think Annabelle has a sequel. And then there's The Nun, and it's going to have a sequel, but it doesn't yet. So all of these movies are part of, never heard of my relatives. No, actually, Ed and Lorraine are not my relatives, but I know somebody. I know a guy. So all of these movies are part of the same franchise where they kind of base, probably pretty loosely, on the paranormal investigations and research and all that stuff of Ed and Lorraine Warren. So I'm really surprised that we have some people here who haven't heard of them, or not familiar at all. Patrick Wilson always plays a bad guy. Patrick Wilson, I don't keep up with actors. Is he the one that plays Ed? I know is it Vera Farmiga or the sisters? I get their first names mixed up. The Farmigas. One of them was in American Horror Story, and then the other one was in like the Conjuring movies as Lorraine, of course. So let's get right on with this. Hopefully everybody can still hear me. If anything cuts out or anything like that, please do let me know quickly. Because like I said, we have a 45-second delay, so I'm going to be way ahead of myself if I lose you guys. It's going to be very confusing. So, Ed and Lorraine Warren have nearly become a household name in the paranormal community, but if you're someone who isn't fixated on the topic, you may not be familiar with the notorious duo, and yes, I do mean notorious. And you're going to see why in this video tonight, why I would call them that. The Warrens were paranormal investigators and the founders of New England New England Society for Psychic Research. I always get that mixed up. Ed was a self-proclaimed demonologist. You guys know what a demonologist is by any chance? While Lorraine claimed to possess psychic mediumship abilities. So this is going to be kind of like my opinions and critique on a lot of this stuff. And then I'm going to try to present to you as much as possible. It's almost impossible to present all of the information. Just like in one video, but I'm gonna kind of try to throw in some conjectures, just some of my own personal thoughts and opinions on this. If you don't agree with it, that's perfectly fine. You can, definitely share in the comment section or the live chat. Let me know what you think about it. But I'm gonna kind of try to combine the two to let you know how I perceive the Warrens, because I have a lot of strong opinions on Ed and Lorraine Warren. Not personally, of course. I don't know them. Well, I didn't know them personally. Of course, they both passed away now, but I didn't know them personally, so I can't speak from a personal perspective. I don't know. They might have been the greatest people ever if you knew them personally. I did not, so I only knew them as their personas on television and in books and media. So just keep that in mind. I know I have to put kind of a disclaimer on it because lots of people think, they take things differently than I mean them. So just wanted to clear that up real quick. Okay, looking at the comments. Did they play with Ouija boards? Yeah, I think they definitely talked a few times that I know of about oracles and divination tools and things like that. And I do believe that Lorraine possibly mentioned at one point that she was a firm believer that Ouija boards would let things in. Basically the common belief, which is that it opens a portal or something and it allows evil spirits and demons and things like that to come through. I personally think they can come through anytime they want to. I think that that there's really nothing to come through. They can just go and come and go as they please. I don't know how they do that, but I don't think they need a portal to do it. But I think they were advocates against using divination tools like that. But they did kind of mention it, here and there. But I don't think they played. Well, maybe they secretly on their own time and they didn't tell anybody. Maybe they were a big fan of Ouija board. How many of you guys have played with Ouija boards? Anybody ever used one? I'm very curious to know. I always like to know if anybody's had a Ouija board experience because I've had, I don't know, one or two, and they weren't very good. So I don't know what really happened, but that's neither here nor there for this show. We'll talk about that another time. So getting back to this, their affiliation with nationally and internationally known paranormal cases like the Amityville haunting, or some people call it the Amityville horror house, and the possession of a doll named Annabelle have been pretty much only cemented in the minds of paranormal enthusiasts by the Hollywood films based on these stories, which is what I was talking about just a few minutes ago. But you were the one moving it? That's cool. That's pretty funny. Do they have seances? I think she also was kind of, on the no side, the big, oh no, don't do it side of seances. I don't know why. I think as paranormal investigators, we should probably try to remain open to all sorts of experimentation when it comes to researching and learning about the paranormal. I personally would not just recommend that everybody go out and play with a Ouija board or have a seance. But then again, I don't necessarily have a whole lot of belief in those things myself. I've never really seen anything tremendously impressive come from seances or Ouija boards. I had a very minor experience when I was about 13. God, I'm wanting to tell it now. I'm going to tell it at the end of the show because it's kind of funny. I don't think I've ever told you guys that story, but I don't think that she really ever pushed that kind of stuff on her audience. I think that she, I don't know what they really truly believed about the paranormal. I know that they were Roman Catholics by religion. I guess they probably kind of were aligned in beliefs with, like the wider spectrum of beliefs that go along with Catholicism. But no, I guess they didn't really ever do anything like that. They should have done a lot of these things, and they should have done it, televised or some sort of something to release to the public to kind of show us that they were who they said they were, and but they didn't, unfortunately. But yeah, I think if a person really wants to do those things, and you're really into the paranormal, you want to research it, I mean, it's at your personal discretion. I wouldn't tell somebody that they should or shouldn't. I wouldn't recommend it, but I wouldn't say not to. You know what I mean? So, heckin' no. Yeah. I think a lot of people kind of feel the same way about that. Oh, you've used boards before. You say boards, I think it's interesting. Do you mean like witch boards? Because I know that there's more of a history to Ouija boards than the Parker brothers, or was it Parker brothers? I think they're the ones that made the Ouija board. I actually saw a real spirit board one time. I don't know if they were really called witch boards or if that was just the Tawny Katane movie back in the 80s, but I think maybe somebody called them witch boards. But spirit boards is another name for them, and I saw this really cool spirit board, at, what was it, like a flea market in northern Ohio one time when I was younger. And it was just so decorative and so fancy and so old. I mean, it looked like it was really worn and had a lot of character. And I came so close to buying it. And I was like, this is not the Parker Brothers version. This one's probably possessed by the devil. So maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should not bring that thing into my house. But it was beautiful. It was really, really nice. Like, you could tell someone put a lot of work and just, a lot of craftsmanship into it. And the paint, too, was painted. So that was really cool. And I wish I had a picture of it, but I don't, unfortunately. Hey, James. Glad to see you. The Warrens weren't researchers. Yeah, well, I guess that's the debate. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. But I would tend to agree with you. I don't believe that they, I don't view them as paranormal investigators. I don't view them as researchers or even enthusiasts, to be completely honest. But I'm going to get ahead of myself. So, yeah, it probably was cursed, truth be told. It was really pretty, though. I came so close to getting it. I kind of wish I had it. I kind of kick myself for that once in a while when I think of it. So let's get right along with this. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this whole thing. So you're probably familiar, if you just recently tuned in here, you're probably familiar with like the Amityville house, with the DeFeos and the Lutz family, the Annabelle doll. Lots and lots of people, kind of can identify that in a crowd. So these things are becoming more popular with all of these Hollywood movies that come out. And, pretty much everybody knows who the nun is by this point. And an interesting little tidbit here, the nun, see, some of these movies, like Annabelle, the movie that they made about Annabelle, the Warrens never actually told them that story. So I'll give them that. They didn't fabricate that particular story. That was just 100% creative license on Hollywood's part but they basically just loosely based it because they took the Annabelle concept and put it into its own story. But other than that, I think most of these are at least loosely based on, some case or something that they report at the Warrens. So, hola. The nun was stupid. I have to agree with you. I did not like the nun. I thought that maybe I would at least enjoy the scare factors, like the jump scares and the, grotesque imagery and the cinematography and things like that. And I didn't enjoy it at all. At all. And I don't know, maybe I'll rewatch it and just give it one more chance, but I really just wasn't impressed. Never use a board. That's probably good advice too. But curiosity killed the cat. So they were demonologists. So Ed was actually a demonologist, but Lorraine was allegedly a psychic medium. Although she never called herself that. I think she referred to herself as clairvoyant. And there are so many words that it kind of like the verbiage for supernatural mental abilities, that it gets really confusing. And I honestly, if I had to tell you right now, like, what's the difference in a clairvoyant and a psychic medium, I don't think I could tell you and be 100% accurate. I wish I could. But I think there's like a slight variation in the two words, and then you have like the ones who are like clairaudient, I think. Is that what it is? Clairaudient, which is that you hear ghosts. I mean, aren't we all? If we've had a paranormal experience, we probably heard a ghost before. So very confusing terms. But technically, he was a demonologist. She was a psychic of some sort, but they were both paranormal investigators or researchers. So yeah, they are doing another Annabelle. I don't think I really enjoyed that Annabelle movie either. But then again, I'm not 100% sure I saw that one. I feel like I did, but maybe I didn't. I'm not sure. They kind of all blend together. So, Getting back on track here, many people within and outside of the paranormal community respect and view them as brave ghost hunters who spearheaded a movement which would allow the pseudoscience, which is paranormal investigation, to grow in popularity and acceptance, therefore moving generations of curious investigators closer and closer to the answers they seek. Others, however, see them in an entirely different light, and I might kind of be in that category myself. So let's take a look at just, some of their cases, and let's just talk casually about some of these cases. Okay. Hellraiser. I love the first and second Hellraiser. Yeah, those are two of my favorite horror movies. And I think Hellraiser is the only movie that's really ever kind of scared me a little bit. Yeah, Clive Barker is, definitely. Annabelle Creation. I haven't seen that for sure. Okay, so getting with their high-profile cases. So the Warrens claim that they worked on over 10,000 cases, and I'm going to repeat that a lot throughout this stream. Over 10,000 cases in 50-some odd years. So, guys, let me just throw this out here. If you have a calculator, if you're good at math, count that up, how many cases a day that is. Pretty shocking. I think that may be quite an exaggeration on their parts. But they, of course, had a handful, maybe half a dozen or a little more that most people who know who they are familiar with. So the Warrens credit themselves with over 10,000 cases, but as we all know, there are a handful of high-profile cases that are virtually synonymous with their name. Perhaps these aren't even the most fascinating cases, and it's not. There are some that are lesser known that are, kind of more interesting. But if we can debunk their best work, then there probably is not much hope for the stuff that they were more eager to publicize. So getting on with it, let's take a long look at a short list of the most popular cases and talk about the most telling pieces of information. The Johnson-Bono, I'm so tongue-tied tonight, guys, Johnson-Bono murder case, also known as, there was a novel called The Devil Made Me Do It. So, either name. It's the same case. So this happened in Brookfield, Connecticut in 1981. Arne, I'm not sure if this is Arne or Arne. It's just A-R-N-E. We're going to call him Arne. Arne Cheyenne Johnson murdered his landlord, Alan Bono, while Johnson's fiancée, Debbie Glatzel, watched in terror. The reason? Because he was possessed by the devil, according to the Warrens. According to them, I feel like I need a synthesizer to signal suspense. Dun, dun, dun. Just a year or so before that, Debbie's younger brother, David, had an alleged possession going on as well, telling his family that he was having nightmares involving a man with big black eyes, a thin face, animal features, jagged teeth, pointed ears, horns, hooves, basically like, kind of like that cartoon depiction of the devil is kind of what I think of. Which, by the way, guys, I don't think the devil looks like that. I don't think he's a goat man. Does anybody watch that Sabrina show, that dark, spooky Sabrina that's on Netflix, where they kind of they show the devil and he's a goat monster? Yeah, I don't know what's up with that depiction, but it's kind of funny to me anyway. I think it's a little hilarious. But anyway, rather than seeking medical help for the boy, first and foremost, the family instead contacted the Warrens. The Warrens came to investigate and eventually called for multiple exorcisms to be performed on the boy because Lorraine, and this is a quote, saw a black, misty form next to him. The child was complaining that invisible hands were choking him and there were red marks on him. He said that he had the feeling of being hit. So basically he was being attacked by some supernatural creature, some invisible, phantom person or entity or something like that. It was after the final exorcism that the Warrens insisted the demon had left David and gone into Arne. So Arne Cheyenne, the one we were talking about at first. So, anybody familiar with this case by any chance? This is a weird case. This is like the first case, I believe, in United States history where the defense was demonic possession. And I think prior to this, there had only been like 2 cases in the UK. I'm not entirely certain on that, so don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure that's how it goes. So very, very interesting in a almost hilarious way. I can't help but laugh when people, I mean, court, you're gonna go to court, a murder trial, you're gonna say like this is your defense. I just think it's a bit much. I don't know about you guys, but I think it's a bit much. Yes, Japanese horror films are good. I really like Korean horror films. And then there are some Chinese ones that were pretty good, I think, but I feel like there weren't many from China. Korean, though, they make really, really good horror movies. Um, let's see here. Yes, yes, I see it now. Korean, yeah. Yeah, actually, Asaka, I do like the rom-coms and dramas, which I normally don't like those types of movies if they're like American-made movies, or I don't know. It seems like foreign movies of that genre are a lot better to me, anyway. Anime? I'm not an anime person. I don't know much about it. One Punch. Babadook. Yeah, I actually kind of like the Babadook. It wasn't bad at all, and I really thought that I would hate it, but I think it was okay. You own a goat. He is devilish. Eat everything and always clumsy. Oh, my brother had a goat a long time ago. His name was Willie T. That was the meanest little goat in the world. It was so small. But one day he got in a boat and he floated out onto a pond, and I don't know whatever happened to him. He was mean. He was really, really mean. He would just, butt you all the time with his head. Goats are just such funny animals. It's hard to take a goat seriously as like a scary goat monster. I'm sure if I saw the goat man of Pope Lick, I would probably change my opinion, but I haven't, so I won't. Oh yeah, The Exorcist. Yeah, no, we ain't forgetting The Exorcist. That movie, and it's going to come up in this video a lot too. That movie was so influential, not even just in terms of like creative endeavors, not just movies, not just Hollywood or media, books, stories, whatever else. It was actually influential in the paranormal community for people who saw it and, maybe thought that they could kind of fake their own demonic possession. And I always think that it is so strange how some people think that, and at the time, something like that wasn't very common, of course. So maybe that factors into why they thought they could get away with this. But why did people watch this movie and then try to go home and emulate it and convince people that they were possessed? Because, I mean, come on, guys. I know it was uncommon in that era, but it doesn't mean that people are not going to figure out that you're just basically mockingbirding everything that you saw in The Exorcist. But there are a lot of people who try to play it off like they possessed by the devil just because they liked the movie. I guess because it was so scary and it resonated with them so much. There really wasn't anything quite that spooky back then. Not even Rosemary's Baby. That wasn't a very good movie, actually. It wasn't scary at all. But yeah, probably the scariest movie of its time, I guess. Maybe that's why people wanted to be possessed. Roast goat. Ooh. Yeah, I've heard that the Exorcist book is better than the movie, but I'm just not ever going to read it. I'm not going to read it. Tell of Two Sisters. Yeah, I know that one. I've seen that one. Cello. Cello is my favorite, and I believe it's Korean. But what a spooky, spooky movie. Poor goat, he died in the pot. I don't think he died. I don't know. I think he stayed out there for a little while. I think he was fine after that. Surely they would have seen him or something. So, but yeah, he was probably fine. I saw it when I was little and had my sons watch it. Oh, wow. Yeah, I would say it's definitely scary. The Eye. Yeah, I know The Eye. Oh, I used to watch so many Korean horror films and Japanese horror films and stuff on IFC, I think, or Sundance, one of the two. That's where I kind of got my start into those types of movies. And I just loved them. And then I started trying to find them on DVD. And of course, that was at a time where Amazon wasn't quite as super of a store as it is now. So it was kind of hard to find stuff like that to buy copies of it. But I did find a copy of Cello I was so excited about that, years and years ago. It's like, oh my God, I have my own copy of cello. This is so cool. I just love cellos as well. I actually love the instrument, a cello. I wish I could play one. I probably could. I could play a lot of stringed instruments. Maybe I could play a cello someday. It's on my bucket list. So we'll see. we'll just see. So moving right along with the story here, I have to say, this, a lot of people, okay, let me just say there. A lot of people are like, well, they might be hoaxing people and they might be liars and they might be cons, but they're not hurting anybody. And I'm not talking about just the Warrens. I'm just kind of saying in general, whether it's the paranormal community or if it's like multi-level marketing, whatever it is, some offbeat, oddball organization in one way or another. I understand, like, a lot of people kind of give them a pass, like, yeah, it's okay, they didn't hurt anybody, they didn't rob anybody. But I think, and this is like where the paranormal crosses the line, and I personally, in my lifetime of being a ghost hunter and meeting lots of other ghost hunters and ghost teams and doing conventions and just mingling and then talking to what they call clients, which I like to call just people who own haunted houses. So I think it's pretentious to call them clients. I've met a lot of people who, were paranormal investigators and otherwise good at what they do. And then they would kind of try to cross over into the role of maybe not just parapsychologists, but maybe psychiatrists, psychotherapists, psychologists. And you can't do that, because most of the time, paranormal investigators are people who are not necessarily affiliated with any real scientific organization or real medical organization. We're not doctors. We're not scientists. We are not, we're not Elon Musk. I don't even know what he does. Probably like a theoretical physicist. We're not those either. But I have actually encountered people who took it upon themselves to give homeowners advice on things to do when, maybe someone in the home had mental illness, or maybe they had drug addiction, or maybe they had alcohol addiction. And maybe it was very obvious that these alleged activities and things, paranormal things that were going on were actually a product of someone suffering from mental illness. And, here go these pompous ghost hunters like, yeah, that's okay. Let me just, do an EVP sesh, and then I'll run the devil off, and they take it upon themselves to fix this problem. And I think that, all is fine and well until you cross that line where you're trying to do a real professional's job. Because let's face it, guys, ghost hunters, we're pseudoscientists. We're not even really scientists. Scientists in the meaning of, like, we perform experiments to try to prove the paranormal, but it's a pseudoscience at best. We can't be taken seriously as, like, we're not psychologists or psychiatrists or anything like that. And I think that does hurt people a lot. And I think that's one of the first things in this video that I like to point out about the Warrens that I think bothers me the most is, in this particular instance, not only did they just go in and perform their paranormal duties, they actually, I feel like they probably kind of guided this woman into deciding to have exorcisms performed on her son when he probably needed medical help. And in one of the articles that I have linked in the description box, you're going to see, like, there's a couple of statements, one from a doctor, one from, I don't know, somebody else. I can't remember right off. But this doctor is talking about, and I've read this in a lot of places, how most people who claim to be possessed of demonic possession or, whatever else kind of possession, because there are other kinds, are actually people who are suffering with schizophrenia. So there's also a paragraph, I think it's in the same article. Yeah, I think it's in the same article, where Father Thomas Lynch, who is a chancellor of the Archdiocese of Hartford, Connecticut, states that 99.99% of people who claim that they're possessed are actually not possessed. And so I think that, well, I don't know what you guys think about possession. I know I have my own kind of thoughts and opinions on it. which maybe I'll talk about at the end of the stream. But I think that, if there are any people out there listening who are ghost hunters or, planning to be, or maybe they have been in the past and they've done this, it's really like, that's the kind of stuff that gives us a bad name. And it's the kind of stuff that kind of drags our community down and sets us back. Never cross the line, you got to know your place and you got to stay in it. Never cross the line. Just, if you think somebody is suffering from something, then definitely just step away from it. It's something that I feel pretty strongly about anyways, so I'll get off my soapbox, but I definitely wanted to mention that. And I think it is hurtful that Ed and Lorraine contributed to this problem, and this problem still exists. It still happens in the paranormal community. So I digress. I promise I digress. All right, let me get a swig of coffee and I'm going to check out the comment section. Do I believe in psychics? That is a hard one for me to answer because I've had some interesting experience with psychics. But I'm going to say no, for the most part, I do not think that what we most quickly point to in our head as a psychic, I don't necessarily believe that that's possible, if that makes any sense. I'm not feeling very articulate tonight, guys. I'm sorry. I'm trying my best. I'm just feeling kind of sick and I have a sore throat. But I think it's hard for me to say because I've never, ever, ever believed in psychics. I wanted to, because I was a big fan of Sylvia Browne and I love reading her books way back in the, late 90s, early 2000s. And I wanted to believe in it, but I was always so doubtful about, is this possible? How is this possible? Why is this possible? I would think that if I was a psychic, I would probably not want to tell anybody. I wouldn't want to be on TV, just kind of answering questions left and right, one after another. So I feel like it takes away the authenticity and then it just takes away from it. And so I had so many questions, whether it was from the practice itself or the ability itself to the way that alleged psychics handled themselves in public. And then I had that experience, which I made a YouTube video about. You guys might remember last year. I think it was last year. Yeah, when I made the video about the psychic who, she's a medium, I think is what she refers to herself as, a psychic medium. She came on the original Paranormally Correct, which was a radio talk show, and she just blew our minds. She totally blew our minds. And sometimes I go back and I'll listen to that recording and I think, is this for real? Like, I'm not, like, I'm hearing this and I'm not just going along with it. Like, is she for real? Because this woman from New Zealand is telling me all these things about myself that not very many people know. And some things that even I didn't know at the time. So because of my experience with her, I feel like maybe it is possible and maybe there are just a lot of fakes out there. But I'm first inclined to say no, I don't believe in them. So I'm kind of on the fence, I think. I'm always open, I'm always open to, if anyone wants to convince me or prove to me, like, psychic wants to challenge me to a banjo duel or anything like that, I would be up for it with an open mind. But I don't know. It's just so hard to say yes and it's hard to say no. Let's see here. What else we got? I believe in psychics and psychic abilities because I play poker semi. And I feel, yeah. Yeah, I think there's a difference in, I think there's intuition, there's instinct, there's premonitions. I think there's something called precognitions. I'm not sure what the difference in premonition and precognition is. Maybe I just made that word up. I'm not entirely sure. But there's so many, it's like the word psychic mediumship, clairvoyant. There's so many different terms, and it's like, where do all these terms go? Like, we need this many? Do we really need this many? So I feel like we definitely have intuition. I feel like everybody has a form of intuition. Everybody has instinctual feelings. And if you really are in tune with your body, I think you can definitely follow your instincts 100%, because I do. I pay close attention to that stuff, and my instincts are almost always right. I think last week, I believe it was, yeah, my return show, we were kind of talking about the gift of fear, which is kind of like an instinct as well, but it's more so geared towards danger and something, your body basically alerting you to unsafe situations, or it's not a psychic thing. It's not like you're having a psychic vision that something bad's going to happen. It's like your body just is picking up on the energy of another person. Maybe it's making you uncomfortable. It makes you feel alarmed for whatever, so many different variations of this and so many different ways to interpret it. But yeah, I think it's totally possible to have like these weird instinctual type things, but I don't think that they're necessarily psychic powers. I don't think that they're psychic abilities. I think there's something more realistic and more practical and more important to survival, if that makes any sense. So, psychic twins, yes, they are. They certainly are. And the psychic twins, I feel like they kind of fall into that category of people who are indirectly, in a way, hurting others. Mostly just, for fame and fortune. Obviously, let's be real, that's what they're really after, is fame and fortune. I don't know if any of you guys have seen my Psychic Twins videos. I made them right after I started my YouTube channel, and I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know who I wanted to be on YouTube, if I wanted to be myself or a teeny bopper. But they're disastrous videos, but I think I made a few good points, and I'm going to revisit some of the psychic stuff at some point in the future. Not necessarily about them, but just, psychics in general. So you don't have to watch them if you don't want. We'll just talk about it in a nice, new, better video. One that's not so crazy. So, Nostradamus. I think Nostradamus is overrated. I don't really think that there was much of anything to that whole Nostradamus fad. And I think it was hyped up by the media so much that, in that circumstance, you just can't believe what they're telling you, because, obviously the media likes to twist things. They like to change things and hype things and turn them, because they've got to get views. Just like on YouTube, they have to have viewership, and they have to have ratings, and they don't get that with just the plain old boring truth. So I don't think there's really too much, just too much interesting stuff surrounding Nostradamus. I think it's kind of a moot point. You believe in psychics? I don't know. I've only had that one person experience, which I had multiple experiences with her, but it just, the one person. And I've met so many people who claim to be psychic, and they're so obviously not psychic. And it's just like, I take that back. I had one other experience that was a little bit peculiar. I'll tell you this one real quick, because it's just, kind of a short experience, and I can't remember all the details anyway. So my husband and I don't think we were married at the time, but we were on a trip, and we saw a palm reader sign on a building, and I was like, oh my God, let's go back. I want to mess with her, because she's probably going to try to, fish for information, because that's one of the techniques or strategies, whatever. I like to call them strategies, by the way, strategies. That's one of the strategies that psychics use to kind of get information out of you, and then kind of follow your lead on what you're telling them, so that they can make educated guesses and impress you with their psychic powers. I know psychics and palm readers are kind of different things, but in a way they're pretty similar too. So we turned around and we went back and we went in and I just had to have my palm read. And I'm fascinated by palm reading. if for one reason and one reason alone, you know how they say you have a lifeline on your hand? Mine ends very abruptly. And I've always had this weird irrational fear in the back of my head that that actually means something. And I don't know, I'm going to leave it at that because I don't know how much truth there is to palm reading, but it's an incredibly fascinating art. Is it an art? I don't know. Whatever it is, it's interesting. So anyway, we go in and she's, you know, this very pretty, nice little girl. I think she was probably actually Indian. And it was very much a cultural experience as well, which is kind of strange, not what I expected at all. And she starts reading my palm, and I'm just kind of, you know, fighting back a smirk because I thought it was going to be baloney. And then she started telling me that I was basically, I forget how she worded it, but she was bringing up things about being a writer and an author and a radio host. And I was like, what? And I kept telling myself, I was like, don't give her any cues. Don't give her any cues. So I was really doing my best to just be like, oh, huh, interesting. Oh, really? You know, so that she couldn't get, you know, latch on to something and be like, aha, I figured her out. So I didn't give her anything. And she just sat there and just told me this really vague stuff that was accurate, but it was very vague. So I don't know. I don't know what happened. That was a weird, definitely not what I expected. Weird experience. Have you guys ever had your palm read by any chance? Anybody believe in that? Or maybe you know how to do it, or, you know, who knows? You can feel a person's intent toward you, like if they were trying to harm you. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think people can definitely do that. The more in tune you are with your body and your instincts, definitely. Because in a way, that's kind of a survival instinct. And I think that's why we have it. You know, just my personal opinion. I could be completely, totally wrong. I don't know. But it's just something that kind of makes sense to me. So, yeah, definitely believe in instincts, James. Beginning level. Yeah, it could be. I don't know. You know, they've changed their mind about that old thing that they used to tell us back in the 80s and 90s that we only use 10% of our brain. And I've seen some other stuff, you know, it's like, no, we use all of it, but we use it differently. Or, you know, some people don't use certain parts where, you know, they might use other parts that another person doesn't use. So it's like, okay, well, which is it? What is it? Do we use all of our brain? Do we not? Is there a little part in the back of our brain that gives us psychic powers? What? I don't know. I have no idea. So it could definitely be like something related to that, possibly. I don't know, but it's an interesting theory, definitely. Before the media, do you believe that people can see into the future? I don't think that people can see into the future. The only reason, really, that I think that's not possible is because nothing is ever guaranteed or for certain. I think it's possible, and this is where kind of like premonitions come in. I had an experience one time when I was young, and I grew up in a very rural area. Lots of trees, lots of cliffs, lots of curves, lots of just, you know, terrible geographical terrain. Lots and lots of deer, so many deer. And if you guys live in a place where there are lots and lots and basically an overpopulation of deer, you know that they frequently come out in the road and try to kill you when you're driving. That's a very common thing around Kentucky, where I'm from. And you know, there's certain times of the year you kind of get used to their schedule. You kind of know when to expect them and when to be on the lookout and when you can kind of let your guard down. And there was one particular morning in the summer, which was not the right time of the year for deer to be out and about. Not at all, not even close. And I was on this one particular road where, you know, there are deer in the winter, but not in the summer in the morning. But I had this premonition kind of I guess that's what you would call it, a premonition. And it was just like a thought that went through my head. A deer is going to be in the road when you go around the curve. And I can't really explain the way that it came across to me, but basically it was just this thought, there's going to be a deer. So I started hitting my brakes because, I was kind of listening to this instinct or whatever it was. And there really was. When I got around this really sharp curve, there actually was a deer. So that, I guess, is not technically seeing into the future, but again, probably more so like an instinctual thing. Intuition, instinct, premonition. I don't know. I think a lot of this stuff is possible. I just don't think that I don't think it's the same thing as like sitting down with Tana Mojo and telling her like, you're going to be a superstar, like the psychic twins do. You know what I mean? I think that if psychic powers exist, they exist in such a more realistic way than just telling somebody's future or telling someone if they're going to be a superstar or telling someone that they're going to win the lottery. And I'll tell you what, I don't care what any psychic says. If you really, really, really could see into the future, you really, really would play the lottery. Anybody would. Anybody. I'm like the most humble person, but I would play the lottery. And then I would give the money to like all of the animal rescue places in the world. Come on, psychics. Hello. And then we have like the whole James Randi Foundation. Do you guys remember? I've talked about that a couple of times on the channel a couple of years ago. The Randi Foundation was offering $1 million reward to anyone who could prove they had psychic abilities. $1 million. I think if I was psychic, I would have tried it. I would have definitely gone for it. But nobody really ever tried for it. I mean, there was like a couple of people off and on, but nobody really tried to get it. I mean, obviously Sylvia Brown wasn't there. Miss Cleo wasn't there. So I don't know. It makes you wonder. It really does. Anyway, I digress again. You live in Florida, lots of nutty people. Oh, yeah, I know. Florida is full of lots of interesting and glorious things, like alligators. It took me years to find an alligator in Florida, by the way. They're not as easy to come by as what people think they are. I live in Virginia. Way more nuttiness. Yeah, they definitely do. Old-fashioned nutties. I've had many dreams that came true as well. I've heard so many people have that exact same experience, and I've had one dream that was kind of like a premonition. And I don't know where those fit in. They fit in somewhere. I don't know what their purpose is. Maybe, sleeping is close to astral projecting. And I do believe for sure in astral projection because I've done it. I've practiced it. I've researched it. Not in that order, of course. But yeah, I know a lot about astral projection and like the astral plane. And there's so much to that topic that maybe dreams are more connected to that type of intuition just because you're in like a different spiritual state or something. You're closer to the astral plane. So who knows? I mean, there are so many mysteries and things like that. It's what makes the paranormal so awesome is because, it's just so many different experiences. It's crazy. Totally crazy. Do you believe in telekinesis? I think I'm open to telekinesis. I'm a big, I hate to say I'm a big fan. I hate that phrase. I'm a fan of blah, blah, blah. I'm a fan of Marilyn Manson, not a fan of telekinesis. I'm someone who's very fascinated by like the men who stare at goats and the psychic government tests and things like that, which they say never happened, and that's not true. But we all know that it is. We know it's a conspiracy. But I find that to be like incredibly fascinating that they were able to harness mind power to make psychic weapons. And I kind of wonder, like, is that if this other type of psychic ability does exist, it's not just instinctual or related to that. Like, is it this? Is it this kind of, you guys know what I'm talking about? Like the movie. And then, it was like a real experiment. I'm probably going to do a video on it at some point, but The Men Who Stare at Goats was the movie that they made out of it. And it was pretty closely based on a true story. Well, a conspiracy true story. I think the government would probably say it was not a true story. But you know what I mean. It's true. We know that they're lying. So yeah, it's definitely hard. It's so different for everybody. I don't think there's any one way to, like, you can't just give somebody advice and just say, like, here's how you do it, I think you kind of have to discover a way to do it on your own. And the reason I say that is because recently, like a couple weeks ago, I was listening to an episode of the old radio show, Paranormally Correct, and we were talking about astral projection and kind of like, discussing the research we had done on different pieces of evidence that show, like, things that can help you astral project and things like that. I was like, no way, this stuff would have never worked for me as I'm listening to, my own voice. Like, there's no way. I don't even know why that I decided to put that in the show, because looking back on it, what worked for me was almost completely accidental. And it started with basically lucid dreaming, with trying to control what was going on in my dreams. And then from there, it got a lot easier, I think. And if that's not what started it, then I don't know what started it. But I think that's what started it. So let's see here. Tested it to see if it was real. I would like to hear that story. Sock, I would really like to hear that sometime. Do you want me to guest you and you can come on and tell us your story? I know nobody wants to do that, but if you do, you can. Philadelphia experiment, yeah. Can't induce it. Take me about a month to really try. Yeah, it's weird like that. I have found that one thing, maybe this is one piece of advice you can give to people. If you can attach it to like a really strong emotion, I think it works a lot easier. It becomes more readily available, if somehow you can attach your projection to a very, very, very powerful emotion like love, or, I don't want to say hatred, like don't go stalk your high school bully in the astral realm or anything like that. But yeah. Maybe you have a relative on the other side of the world you haven't seen in years, or like a best friend or something like that. But I think that really helps. And I can't explain to you what that means because it's just too difficult to explain. But I think if you practice enough, you'll get it. You'll figure out what I mean. So definitely try that if you're trying to astral project, and definitely be careful with that stuff, because I mean, going back to, we're paranormal enthusiasts and paranormal investigators and pseudoscientists, we want to explore the unknown, and that's perfectly normal, but some things can just get out of hand. They really can. So, similar to teleportation. Yeah. Yep. I don't astral project. I just forgot how I got there. Oh, hello, Pappy. I didn't know you were here. Thoughts on remote viewing? Yeah, I'm totally into remote viewing, and that's like, I think that's why I'm kind of just really obsessed with the whole government experiment thing into, like, psychic abilities and mind powers and mind bullets. So yeah, definitely believe that remote viewing works. I mean, for some people, I think it exists. Whether or not you can get it to work is probably a whole other ball game by itself. So, remote viewing, same thing. Yeah, again, it's one of those things where, like, psychic and all of that medium, there's a lot of words for one basic idea or concept. I think there is a little bit of a difference in remote viewing versus astral traveling, projecting, etc. I think if you're astral projecting, you're actually projecting your essence or your spirit or something. I don't know if it's your spirit, your soul, I don't know, but something is projecting out of you. But I think if you're remote viewing, you're more so staying in your body and just pushing your mind. Does that make any sense? That's kind of how it feels to me. Stranger Things. Yeah, that was based on those experiments. Montauk, I think. Astral project. Yeah. Yeah, you do. You do leave your body. I fully believe that. I fully believe that something, like I said, whether it's your spirit or your essence, something definitely leaves your body when you project. Like a bird eye view of the world. Yeah, and that's pretty similar to like near-death experiences, NDEs. In case you've heard of the abbreviation and you don't know what the word means or what it stands for. So yeah, a lot of near-death experiences, the very first thing that people point out is that they were hovering above their body. So if that's what you're kind of talking about, then yeah, that's, really similar. It's really scary too to think like you're kind of forcing yourself to have a near-death experience almost in a way. Peeking through the keyhole, yeah. So let's hop back over to Ed and Lorraine. Again, I know this is it's a difficult topic. There's so much to cram into so little time. What were we even talking about? We were talking about, so we're talking about this demonic possession case. Okay. Yeah, definitely very strange that a mother would witness the type of behavior that she witnessed from her preteen child, and then contact ghost hunters instead of doctors. I found that to be very peculiar. Why did this woman call Ed and Lorraine before she called a doctor? There's something, and you may not really follow me when I say this right now, and I may not even be able to make it completely transparent throughout the rest of the video, but I have this personal theory, and you can believe it or not. If you disagree, that's fine. I have this theory. I think that Ed and Lorraine were kind of setting up deals with people in advance before the public ever heard the ghost stories, not necessarily like Amityville. Because obviously Amityville started with the DeFeos, so I don't think that they had anything to do with that. But like this case, for example, and then if you've ever seen A Haunting in Connecticut, the story where the family moves into this place, it used to be a funeral home. Yeah, it used to be a funeral home. They move in because their son has cancer. They want to be closer to the doctor. So this was a Warren case as well. I think that a lot of times these incidents that were happening, it was something that was worked out with the Warrens in advance. And I know that probably sounds nuts, but there are just so many things where it's like, it just sounds like this is a setup. It just seems like they had some type of plan before they even kind of started with the paranormal aspect of it. And you may be thinking, why? Because she didn't call a doctor. Yeah, that's one reason. I think, if you're a parent, maybe ask yourself if your child behaved in this horrible, awful, possessed type of way. Would you call a doctor or would you call a ghost hunter? I mean, really, guys, would you? I think I would call a doctor, personally. And they're, this kid wasn't even kind of demonstrating the worst type of behavior that he possibly could. But it was really vague on the internet about what he was doing specifically, so I don't want to misquote it. But he was just, growling, snarling, being somewhat aggressive for the most part. But, all of these things were kind of also possibly symptoms of schizophrenia, unfortunately. So I just think it's really weird that there's so many cases where it seemed like people make kind of a dumb decision to go to the Warrens instead of the proper authorities, like, doctors or cops or whoever. It's just really strange. So the Enfield poltergeist, we talked about that last year. I think it was last year, maybe it was the beginning of this year. I do not remember. That was a fun show. You should definitely check it out. The Enfield poltergeist, I'm going to omit from this because Ed and Lorraine, no matter what they like to tell people, when they talked about these cases, they were not part of the Enfield poltergeist case. But they claim it. They claim that it was one of their cases, but it wasn't. The family and all of the people involved in that case said that Ed and Lorraine were there for maybe half a day, I think, if even. And then they were gone. And when they were there, Ed was trying to proposition people into going kind of into cahoots with him to fabricate a story to make money. Interesting enough. I think there's not a whole lot of, like, you don't hear about the plumbers from the Ghost Hunter show going around bribing people. You know what I mean? You don't hear about, like, even the guys from Ghost Adventures or anything like that. You don't hear about them going around bribing people to come up with stories. And they probably have. I mean, they're not the most trustworthy people in the world just because they're TV personalities. But the amount of inconsistencies and the amount of discrepancies with Ed and Lorraine's cases, I think it speaks for itself. It really, really speaks for itself. So let's move on to Annabelle, because, lots of people know about Annabelle. The real Annabelle doll is a vintage Raggedy Ann. You guys remember Raggedy Ann? I liked Raggedy Ann and Andy. But it's a Raggedy Ann character doll collected by Lorraine around 1968 from an unknown woman who was in nursing school. She and her roommate claimed that the doll moved around and wrote ominous notes on its own parchment paper. The Warrens took the doll and put her in their museum because Lorraine claimed the doll was possessed by a demon girl named Annabelle Higgins. Well, actually, there's no emphasis on whether the entity said to possess the doll was just a girl or just a demon, since the Warrens have kind of expressed it both ways. So I don't know if they for sure knew what they were talking about, obviously, or, if maybe they couldn't decide which story they were going to go with. But I've definitely heard it both ways. It's the spirit of a girl. It's the spirit of a demon. Who knows? Who really knows? I have a lot of questions about this case, a lot of questions that apparently can't be answered. And if anybody out there can answer them, please do leave it in the comments, because I've really looked and I can't ever find. First of all, who is the person? Who did they get this doll from? And where did this person get the doll from? I would think that as popular and mainstream as this story became, at some point, somebody would have wanted to come forward and talk about ownership of the doll. You could say, like, well, she was a nurse, she was in nursing school, she was just getting started in her medical career. Maybe this girl didn't want to tarnish her reputation. And I have to say, if that's the argument that could be used for this case, I would say that when a person, especially someone who's not familiar or acquainted with the paranormal, and someone who's really a logical-minded person who doesn't believe in the paranormal, we all know the kind of person I'm talking about. When they see something like that, it shakes them to their core, as much as I hate that expression. It hits them on a very personal, deep level, and they kind of can't help but talk about it. And this happens all the time, and I'm not saying that it's not the exception and it's the rule. I'm saying that it's most commonly the way that things happen. If a person is not a believer and not even a skeptic, but just someone who doesn't even live in the same world with us paranormies, and they see something, it's going to shatter all of their opinions and beliefs and thoughts about the world around them. So I find it incredibly strange that nobody ever came forward to say, this was my doll and here's what she did. No, Lorraine just shows up with a Raggedy Ann doll that's supposedly, according to her, possessed by a demon girl. And, they have a couple of anecdotes to go along with this doll. And that's it. And nobody ever talks about its origin ever again. What's also funny in my personal opinion, is Ed claims that there was a museum visitor who disturbed the doll on one particular day because they had a sign up that you're not supposed to bother Annabelle, you know, don't touch her, don't take her out of her case, or, you know, if she's like chained up in logging chain, don't take the chain off, she'll escape. So this person disturbed the doll in one way or another, and Ed claimed that he died in a motorcycle accident when he left the museum. That's a little macabre. It's a little dark, Ed, wherever you are out there. There's no evidence of anybody dying in a motorcycle accident, you know, under these circumstances. There's not. There's no name. There's no news report. Nothing. So that's more than likely a completely fabricated story. And you have to wonder, if somebody's being honest about something as big and in your face as like a possessed demon doll, and they're going to all of this going out of their way to preserve it and keep it chained up in a box with a sign, you know, put it on display in their haunted museum. Why would you lie about something like that if you're not someone who's also willing to lie about the doll itself? Or you're someone who's also willing to lie about the cases that you investigate, how many you've investigated, who was involved in the investigations. You're probably willing to lie about the paranormal activity that took place in these locations. You know, that's the thing about it, is like, everybody makes mistakes, and, you know, everybody says things once in a while that are kind of misunderstood by the general public. And it's maybe in some weird way, it's possible that Ed was joking. But I think that someone who could tell a story like that could also probably fabricate a lot of other stories. And you kind of lose faith in people. I mean, because you're kind of treading on shaky ground to begin with when you're presenting yourself as a paranormal investigator to the general public. Because, well, most people don't believe in ghosts, first of all. Most people don't believe in the paranormal. It's a pseudoscience, like I say all the time. And you want to always be forthcoming, and you always want to be as brutally honest as possible. And you always want to put your best foot forward so that you can establish a relationship with your not really fans or followers, but, you know, with the people who share your interests, the people who trust you. So I feel like, from, you know, just my personal opinion, if you were to lie to your audience about, you know, one thing, you probably lied about other things, but you most definitely lose their trust. And that's how it is for me. I think that if there's a personality out there, if, you know, if I were a fan of Ed and Lorraine Warren, and I discovered that they had lied about a lot of weird, random, but seemingly trivial things, it would cause me to lose trust in them. So I don't know if everybody sees it that way, but I definitely see it that way. That's definitely how I look at that kind of stuff. So if you can't tell the truth all the time, then when are you lying? Basically, when are you also not telling the truth? I don't know. Also, I just think it's really weird that there was never any evidence. What I would have done had I been Ed Lorraine and I got this super spooky haunted doll, I would have set up like a controlled room to do like a controlled scientific experiment. And I would have put cameras on the doll in the room. I would have put like maybe a couple of audio recorders, some type of device to record audio. Maybe have like, you know, like meters or Geiger counters. Have something there that can kind of pick up on, excuse me, EMFs or some type of paranormal activity. You know what I mean? Just do some kind of experiment to see if you can catch the doll moving. But they never did that. They never bothered to do that. Just like they most often did not bother to perform any types of paranormal research experiments on anything that they have. I mean, I've never once in all of my years hearing about them and reading about them, I've never heard that they tried to experiment with any of their haunted objects in their museum. That would have been the first thing that I wanted to do, you know, and I would want to show my evidence, whether it was just nothing, like if nothing happened in the footage or something really cool happened in the footage, I would definitely want to show that to my public and the people who follow me. They never did anything like that. And I don't understand why, I really don't, because it's not that difficult to do. And they were making thousands and thousands of dollars from all of the book deals, all of the movie deals, all of the interviews. I think I read somewhere that they wouldn't take anything less than $1,000 to do like a speaking engagement at a conference or wherever else they gave speeches. So they had plenty of money to invest in equipment. And I know, obviously this was back in, what was it, 68 when they found the doll. They had tools available to them to perform paranormal experiments with. There's always things, like you've always got a camera, if nothing else. You know what I mean? Like, it's why if you guys, the Warrens, that's who I'm talking about, why if you all were, such great ghost hunters, why didn't you ever contribute any research to the paranormal community? I would have. I definitely would have. It's not that common for a ghost hunter, like a paranormal researcher, to get that kind of notoriety. And so once you do, you should think about your fellow ghost hunters. You should be like, I'm going to contribute to this community to make it a better place for you, my fellow ghost hunters. But they didn't do that. All right, let me check the comments because I've been talking for 45 minutes. Okay, let's see here. That is really interesting, Sock, and I think, yeah, that would definitely be a powerful emotion. So that would definitely probably get you started on the road to astral projection for sure. And I believe you. That is really interesting, and I definitely believe you. You keep getting cut off. Oh, that sucks. I don't know. Maybe it's YouTube. Maybe there's something going on with YouTube because we had a little bit of a problem earlier with sound in the chat and stuff. I know I definitely can't fix it on my end. Unfortunately, I wish I could, but maybe just close it and restart it, possibly. Or you can always check it out later after the stream, too, if it ends up not working. Conjuring 2, the Warrens tried to get involved and were denied. It's been a couple of hours. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they were kind of like, obviously they were the superheroes of the movie. But realistically, they just weren't part of the infill poltergeist case. I could probably find that quote real quick. I know that I included it in my original infill poltergeist video, but I don't. Let's see. Let me see if I can find this quote really quickly. And Warren, I forget the guy's name from the poltergeist. Okay, just searching real quick. Yeah, I probably should have looked this up before because there's no way I'm going to find it very quickly. But I remember roughly what the guy said. I think Ed was pretty much just trying to buy him off. And the guy was like, oh, okay, I see what you're all about, and I don't want anything to do with it. Because, this person was more dedicated, obviously, to the paranormal and integrity in the paranormal, which if you're someone in the paranormal community or the paranormal industry, integrity, people, you have to have integrity. Don't let us all down. So, yeah, it was something to that effect, though, pretty much seeing Ed's true colors come out. And I found something earlier, something I was reading. They were talking about how the Warrens are basically trauma vultures. And I think that they were. I think they definitely were trauma vultures. I think that's a great way to put it because, what it looks like to me, as someone just, researching all this stuff and going off of witness testimony and things like that, and people who ran into them, what it looks like is either they were involved prior to the popular, well-known incidents with these people and possibly working out deals with them, or they were basically searching nonstop for something to latch onto. And the minute something would come out, possibly in the news, they were probably on it immediately, trying to get people to cooperate and work with them. And what an ingenious plan. How genius is that? It was the perfect time to do something like that, because people then weren't as wise to hoaxes as people are now. Nowadays, I feel like we're all expecting hoaxes anytime we hear anything about the paranormal, because we've got the internet, first of all, that really was the last nail in the coffin. But we've got consumer grade editing software that can create Hollywood quality graphics and effects. I mean, I have it on my computer. I'm actually looking at this program right now. I could create an amazing ghost adventure and totally fabricate a story very easily. And unfortunately, lots of people can do that, because lots of people have access to these softwares and programs, and lots of people have the skills and ability to create these things. So a lot of times all we see anymore are hoaxes. So we're on to people these days, but back then was the perfect time to strike, because I feel like people were a lot more gullible. People are always gullible in different ways, throughout any century or era or decade or year. People always, they've always got their own personal brand of gullible. But I think as far as paranormal stuff goes, that was the golden era for Ed and Lorraine back then. Let's see here. What have I got in the comments? Used to be an atheist till my random outer basement. Yeah, well, it's good to be skeptical. Definitely good to be skeptical. I don't think there's a such thing as vampires, though, because that's definitely traceable, the lore for vampires. So you don't have to worry about those things. I don't think they really exist. Bigfoot definitely does, though. As bad as I hate to admit it, because I used to not believe in Bigfoot, but now I do. The idea of investigating a haunted object is really great until you realize you're in the middle of a room with a haunted object. That's true. That is true. I had a haunted Camaro, I think. It was haunted. If it wasn't, I don't know what it was. Actually, I made a video about this a long time ago. Had a Camaro that just would not run for me. And then if a male person would get in it, it would run like a top. That's a whole nother story, though. I'll try to link that. I'll try to link some of the videos that I'm kind of referring to. But I've had some haunted objects, things that I believe were haunted anyway. I don't know if they really were. But the Camaro, I think it definitely was. Truly believe it. Alrighty, let's see here. Oh, we're about to get to the crazy part. Let me just do something real quick. I am messaging people right now. Okay, here we go. What if vampires don't suck blood but can just live forever? I think there are vampires in the sense that some people can just suck the life out of you and just make you feel horrible. Those are the only vampires I believe in. And I wouldn't consider them energy vampires, because I've heard that term or phrase in so many random places. And I just keep thinking, what are y'all talking about? Energy vampires? I don't know. There are no vampires, but there are people who can just really drain you of different things, happiness or money, various things, but probably not blood. And I don't think I believe that anybody lives forever, unless maybe they're like alien creatures or something. Maybe they live forever, possibly. But if you run across anything that indicates vampires, do let me know. Definitely let me know. Yeah, Rebecca. And that's the thing too, is like, it's so divided. There are some people who are staunchly 100% Warren fans, and then there are people who kind of get it, and they kind of see through it. And I don't know how you guys feel about the website Snopes. I know I'm not a big fan of it at all, but occasionally I go there just to kind of reference things, just to see what their input is on it. And I stumbled across it earlier because I didn't know Snopes would have an Amityville horror page, something dedicated to that. And there was, I don't want to spoil it for you, but I'm just going to spoil it. Snopes actually said that it's a little known fact that the Amityville house, the murder house, was revealed as a straight up hoax. I didn't even know that. I just assumed that I was kind of like deducing clues to the point where I kind of decided on my own that it was probably a hoax. But apparently the Amityville house is like a known hoax. It's just not well known. So, which causes some trouble for Ed and Lorraine. And like I said earlier, guys, they could have been like the super sweetest, most awesomest people in the world if you knew them personally, if they were your grandma or grandpa, and that's perfectly fine because we're not really talking about their personal character. We're talking about their professional persona, what they put out into the world. And it's really a shame. It's really, really a shame that all of the work that they did, if they truly believed in the paranormal and they were doing it for the love, the labor of love, and not just to make a lot of money and be famous, there's no telling what they could have accomplished. I mean, they put in years and years of work that could have really contributed a lot to the paranormal community. So, but they kind of didn't. They didn't really contribute anything. But yeah. So let's move on here. 1 second. Where was I at? Okay, so we are getting into the Amityville story itself. Check the comments real quick one more time. $1 grand? Yeah, it's not, but it was in the 60s and 70s. It was a lot more probably than a lot of people made for speaking engagements, I would say. And I would say that price only went up, throughout the 80s and the 90s and definitely up till recent times. So got to factor in inflation. All right, let's see what we got here. I would charge at least $10,000. I've done a lot of conventions, and I know a lot of people who have done lots of conventions. And a lot of them would do like the speaking parts, like they put on a presentation and all that. I love the paranormal so much that I would do all of this for free. I would never, honestly, yeah, okay, it would be great. You make lots of money off of like just doing something you really enjoy, but it's got to be like a labor of love. It has to be something that you care about, something that you're passionate about, because otherwise you're never going to have that factor that kind of binds you to honesty. And that's what we really have to have in the paranormal. We have to have people who love it enough to keep it real, and keep it pure and keep it honest. And that's my main goal in the paranormal, is to always try to put out only the most factual information possible, whether it's reporting someone else's story, interviewing somebody, telling my own story. I always just want to put out the most accurate version, because it has to be, or else we can't move forward as a community. So pretty much their investigations they did not charge for. And I will say this, paranormal investigators should never charge you for an investigation, and I know lots of them do. That's a big no-no. You do not charge for a paranormal investigation. But Ed and Lorraine didn't charge for the investigations. They actually required room and board and expenses paid, which is pretty much as bad as just charging for it. Any investigation that I've ever been on that was really far away, I either made sure that I had the money to, to get a hotel room, to buy breakfast at Denny's, to pay for gas and drinks and snacks and things like that. I've never expected a client, okay, I'm going to go ahead and call it a client, never expected a client to pay for those things. Because, I mean, you're offering pseudoscience. You can't charge for pseudoscience. You just can't. Because there's really, paying for something, you're paying for a professional service. So if Stanley Steamer comes and cleans your carpet, great, you pay them because they're a professional service. But if a whole bunch of scallywags come in with K2 meters, you don't pay them because they're not professionals and you can't gauge their professionalism or their ability by anything. You know what I mean? That's the difference. But there are lots of investigators out there who think they need to get paid for investigations. And I just think that's nuts. Ed and Lorraine are no different because, bed and breakfast and all that stuff. But again, I'll get off my soapbox. Yeah, James. Oh my God. I know exactly what you mean. To be totally frank about it, isn't that such a weird expression? I'm going to be frank. And then it's weird if you know a guy named Frank because you feel like you're pretending to be Frank. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. My mother is one of those people who, if there is a such thing as an energy vampire, man, she can really just take it out of you. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Let's see here. I agree. Happy, my brother. Or my baby. Okay. Happiness vampire. I think my son is 20 now. I'd have to see it to believe it. Would you rather work a full-time job to pay? Well, you kind of have to do both. Yeah, you kind of have to do both. And that's how we always did it. My first paranormal team, we all just kind of had like not the best jobs in the world. So we weren't rolling in the dough or anything like that. I think at the time I worked for a tax company. So I had a horrible job. It paid okay for, the area. But we kind of, we would just schedule around all of our, like real job schedules. And it has to you kind of have to treat it like a hobby. You kind of have to, and it goes back to the labor of love. Like all of us, I mean, there was a lot of us on the team. If we got the whole team together, we would all kind of have to agree, like, okay, here's what we're going to do. If we're going to go to Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, we all need to put in this amount of money. If we're going to go on this trip, one of the great things about the woman who ran the team that I was on, she took us on a trip once and she paid for the whole thing. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. Like, why are you doing this? Because you have bills and a family and, things like that. But you kind of just have to really work together as a good team. You can't, it's just like, you can't do it to make monetary gain. You have to do it as a labor of love. And I just can't say that enough because that's really the best way and the only way really to say that. It's the only thing that really makes sense to me anyway. Debated all night. Ghostbusters. Oh, hey, Sherry. Is it Sherry or Cherie? I have a cousin who has that name and it's Cherie. So I don't know. I'm bad at pronouncing things. But anyway, we're talking about a lot of things, but we're kind of talking about Ed and Lorraine Warren. Excuse me. We're talking about their cases, just like a few of them, and inconsistencies and things that indicate that possibly the Warrens were not the most honest ghost hunters, paranormal investigators. So yeah, but we're kind of all over the place at the same time, which is super cool because we're just talking about everything. Do the investigation for free, record the paranormal activities, sell the video. yeah, you can't really sell the videos. You have to respect the client's or the homeowner, the property owner's wishes. A lot of people want to keep it on the DL. There were so many times where we would investigate like a non-residential or like a commercial place, and they'd be like, okay, don't tell anybody, and please don't show anybody anything. Don't, don't spread this around. And then mostly residential homeowners were really tight-lipped about it. They didn't want a lot of people to know, especially their neighbors and their coworkers. So, oh, okay. But yeah, so that's, you don't have to make money off of it. I mean, at most, if a ghost hunter, like a modern aged ghost hunter, wanted to make money off of what they do, they could start a blog. That's a good way to, I mean, because you're working really hard to produce content for that blog. So it's kind of fair, like, throw some Google ads in and you make a few cents here and there for your work. Or if your blog does really good, you might make a lot of money for it. A YouTube channel, which we all know how YouTube is, they only let the elite make money off YouTube. So that's probably not a very good route for people, like ghost hunters who are looking to somehow kind of turn their hobby into a profession, or a career, not a profession, because it's not a professional thing. Merchandise, that's a great way, especially if it's like creative designs that you do yourself. I like to make t-shirts. I'm really not very good at it, but I like to make designs and stuff. And just because, I'm going to Photoshop something anyway, so I might as well like doodle and draw booger monsters and put them on t-shirts and see if you guys think they're cool enough to buy. That's a really good way to make, a little bit of money on the side with your paranormal stuff. I personally, what I really like about the selling t-shirts thing is donating to like the ASPC and cat rescues. Of course, Catwoman. But I like that aspect of it. I think it's cooler to do it that way, personally. But there are, all kinds of different outlets that you can, different avenues, rather, that you can take to make a little bit of money off of. So, what did you see? What did I see? That upsets me to hear they were. Yeah, they weren't honest people. Ed and Lorraine were very dishonest in their professional life. Like we were saying earlier, they could have been great people to know on a personal basis. Like if they're your relatives or your neighbors, they could have been awesome people. But as far as what they contributed to the paranormal community, they were very, very dishonest and very shady. And it sucks, but, it is what it is. A lot of evidence out there to, kind of support that. But so let's move on to Amityville. I don't even know if we talked about any of it yet or not. Let me see here. Let me get caught up on my notes for just a second. So, surely we all know about Amityville, at least maybe the gruesome history. And the reason it gained so much attention to begin with. If somehow you've never heard of Amityville, then allow me to summarize. The DeFeo family was brutally murdered inside the Amityville house in November of 1974 by the eldest son, Ronald DeFeo Jr. I think it was Jr. A year and a month later, the Lutz family moved in, paying only $80,000 for the house and an extra $400 for the previous family's furniture. 28 days later, the Lutz family left the house. So I'm not going to do the whole story on this. If you guys wanted a video like that, I would do it. But it's such a long, drawn out story. There's so much to it. Very brief summary. They claimed that before they left, they had been in contact with a priest because the activity was so bad in the house. If you've ever seen the movies, you kind of know a little bit about the kind of stuff that they claimed happened in the house. Some of it was changed for the movies. Although I have heard that the most recent remake of the Amityville Horror House was closer to the book. and therefore closer to the original Lutz report. I don't know about that because I've never read the book. I didn't, well, I knew that there was a book, but I've never read it for whatever reason. I think I'll do that at some point soon, though, because it sounds interesting. But they had lots of strange activity. Anything from George claiming that he saw Kathy morph into an old woman and levitate above her bed, to a priest experiencing supernatural blistering on his hands and was told to get out by some unseen entity. And the whole family heard what sounded like what they described as a marching band stomping through the house on their last night there. So their stories kind of, they sound a little bit over the top. And something that I read, I think summed this up the best. There were so many different types of paranormal or supernatural activity going on that it was really unbelievable. So, for example, what I mean by that, it's definitely very likely that if you live in a super duper haunted house, you might hear footsteps, you might hear doors close, you might hear thumping around. It may sound like there's an elephant upstairs if it's really bad. And I have experienced that firsthand, so I know it can really get extreme. I do not, however, think that it's very likely for Kathy Lutz to morph into an old woman and then levitate above the bed. These are two very, very wildly different types of paranormal activity. One of them is a little more Hollywood, kind of like The Exorcist, of course, where the other one is a little more realistic and a little true to what most people have seen in paranormal activity, or not the movie Paranormal Activity, but things that tend to happen when you have paranormal activity. So let me check the comments real quick. What is funny is accusations of their fraud only come from the competition. Not really. They don't have competition. And there's not really any competition. There wasn't then, and there isn't now. It's just not really a competitive field as far as that goes. I mean, it is competitive, but in a totally different way. Ghost hunters, you kind of one up each other. But that's about as much competing as there is. As far as them having a formidable opponent, they didn't really have any. But they did have a lot of enemies because they had gone around and made so many deals with people. And, like, we'll cut you in if you fabricate a story with us. So they had stepped on some toes from doing that. But they had never really, they didn't have an arch nemesis. You know what I mean? So was it real? Yeah, Amityville was all over the place. Amityville was not, no, it was not real, Alan. It was, well, like I was saying earlier, you may have cut out at this point when I was talking about it, but apparently, according to Snopes, the Amityville case was just complete, total hoax, but it's not a well-known fact that it was a hoax. But apparently it has been outed as a hoax. I don't know. That's what it said. We'll take their word for it on this one because it really seems like it. So getting back to this, here's some points I want to make. So where do I start? There's so much. I don't even know where to start. Honestly, I could just throw out random things all night. First one, we'll say it was said that there was over 100 different errors in the Lutz family stories, or, inconsistencies. All of their stories, each time they were interviewed or people talked to them, everybody's stories kept changing. So they were just all over the board with their reports. They couldn't just pick a story and stick with it. So very, very, very inconsistent when it came to recalling what they had gone through. The Lutz family, I think it seems like they rushed into this place pretty quickly and right back out. It's like they rushed in, they rushed out, almost like they had a plan before they even moved in. And this is something I was kind of talking about a little while ago. It seems to me like maybe some of these cases were set up. Maybe the Warrens were working with people behind the scenes. I really wouldn't doubt it. It's just there's been so many people who have reported encounters with Ed Warren. He's almost like a paranormal creature himself in these stories because It's kind of like the Loch Ness Sea Monster. I need about tree fitty. I think Ed Warren was kind of going around telling people he knew about tree fitty. And he was continually wanting people to work with him to fabricate stories. So let's get into that a little bit. The Warrens, let's see, there was an interview that Lorraine Warren did on movieweb.com. She says, "We met George Lutz at a pizza parlor some blocks away because the priest involved had told him that if he went back into the house again, giving the spirit recognition could bring it right back." This is so funny because there's so much about the priest. And if you saw the movies, you remember that there was like the scene with the priest, getting attacked and then being told to get out. And I just kind of went over that as well. So if you're not familiar with it, it was he was very much involved to hear them tell it. So here she's saying that they met with this person. The priest had told them this and told them that. And then she says the priest was right. He also had fallen victim to that house. And we were later to meet with him later. So the priest was interviewed. His name was Father Pecoraro. Pecoraro. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. It'll be in the description box. There's like some links about this. But this particular priest was interviewed, and he said that he never saw anything in the house. Nothing. Like, what? I can just imagine that. So tell us about the time you were attacked by hornets. What? They didn't even bother to cover their tracks with this one. This is the case that excites me the most as far as debunking the Warrens, because there are so many inconsistencies. So another thing that was interesting was, according to the Lutz and the Warrens, the Lutz family was repeatedly throughout their 28-day stay calling the police because they didn't know what to do. The activity was so bad, so they called the police. But upon investigating this, it was discovered that the police had never been called to that place in the entire time that the Lutz family had been there. Weather records also proved that they were lying about finding a demonic hoof print in the snow because there was no snow on the particular date that they claimed they found it. This was not one I was familiar with. I actually found this one later this evening. I don't remember this in the movie, or either one of the movies, because there's multiple. I've never heard that they found demonic hoof prints. Maybe you guys have, but I hadn't. But I think it's interesting that they were so bold that they, felt comfortable to lie about something that could be very easily proven. Either way, that was also a lie. There was also a story about damage in the house, like the doorknobs and I don't know what you call those little flapper majigs, but we'll just say hardware. So like the hardware on the doors and locks, doorknobs, hinges, things like that. There is no damage. Actually, all of the original hardware is said to still be in the house on the doors and stuff like that. So again, more lies on part of the Warrens and the Lutz family. People have been living there. This is really interesting too, if you think about this. People have been living in this particular house ever since this whole debacle, and nothing horrendous has ever happened since. So you have to wonder, either the Warrens were lying or the demons just gave up and went home. One of the two. I'm guessing it's the latter of the two. William Weber, DeFeo's lawyer, so this is Ronald DeFeo's lawyer, claimed to have fabricated this whole story, alongside the Lutz family. And I think I'm not sure what his quote was, but it was something to the effect that they drank a lot of alcohol and they created a lot of the story together. So he completely admitted to it. Yet there are some people who refuse to believe this for some reason. Faye, like Tinkerbell. I'm not a big believer in fairies and stuff like that. I guess it's possible. I kind of feel like stuff like that's a little more fairy tale, pun intended, I guess. But yeah, Snopes is pretty much full crap case, I know, but definitely interesting to point out what they had commented on as far as the Amityville house goes. Anyone tried to sleep in a known haunted area and see how that goes? I've slept in lots of haunted houses. Yeah, things will possibly happen if it's haunted enough, I think. So you have a haunted house too, Case? It's interesting. I'd like to hear your story about your haunted house or your haunted land. If you ever have a chance to tell it or want to tell it, I would like to hear it. So let's move on real quick. We'll get through this because I have had you guys on here for a very long time. I love referring back to these movie web interviews that Lorraine did because, you know, wasn't Abraham Lincoln said that if you tell the truth, you don't have to have a good memory? He was so right. So right. Nobody can remember things and everything well enough to be a good liar. You know, eventually people get caught because they can't remember what they always, you know, are talking about. If they tell somebody lies, they're going to forget them. So keeping in mind, this is just like a tiny little bit of the stuff that kind of proves that this whole Amityville thing is baloney. So then look at something else that Lorraine Warren said. This is hysterically funny when you consider the fact that this whole thing was proven to be a hoax. The case itself has affected our personal lives more than any other case we've ever worked on in 54 years of research. And that's a lot of places. My husband is a religious demonologist. My husband is not well. We've been involved in very bad hauntings, very bad diabolical cases. We've been involved with levitations and blood coming from someone's eyes, all sorts of bad things. But this case followed us right home at night. What? So see, guys, it's, you know, I realized when I was trying to write out this giant disaster of a script for tonight, I told myself at one point, I was like, I don't have to put it all in here because there are a handful of things that are more telling than any other fluff I can add to my script for the live stream. Stuff like that. The fact that this house is clearly not haunted. There are no demons in this house. You have the cops saying, oh no, we never responded to a call. You have the priest, who apparently was such a big deal and instrumental to the story, saying, oh no, I didn't see anything in that house. And then you have like dozens of spectators saying, no, we've lived here and there are no demons, or no, we've been in the house and everything is in good condition, original pieces, everything's good. All of these different sources kind of coming together. So even if we didn't know that Amityville was a hoax, I think we could probably conclude that it was based on this evidence. And then we have Lorraine all the way into like the 90s and 2000s. Obviously, that was before Ed passed away. But we have her commenting on it as if it was the worst case that they had ever taken. And with that, I'm going to digress. I've got like 2 or 3 pages more of notes, but I'm going to digress because I think I've proved my point. Hopefully, if I didn't do a very good job, feel free to let me know, as I'm sure you all will anyway. I want to show you a picture or two. I talked about this picture before. You might remember it. You might not. Give me just a second to pull it up. Let's see. Okay. Should be seeing that right about now. So what you're looking at here, this is one of the only pieces of evidence that Ed and Lorraine Warren have ever attempted to produce, and even they didn't necessarily produce it. I forget who the entity was. It was not the ghost entity, but the organization that had the cameras set up inside of the Amityville house. I believe what they captured in this picture was one of the crew members wearing a pair of glasses. This is not the best resolution version of this picture. There are other versions of it, and it very much looks like, you know, late 20s to late 30s man with glasses. But this is like the only piece of evidence that they've ever tried to present to the public. And you would think you would really think that if they had done all of the investigating that they said that they did, that they claimed, that they would somewhere along the way have at least one piece of evidence, but they don't. They never had any type of evidence. Even I, who, I haven't investigated as long as they have, obviously, I have more evidence than that. And it's just from like the odds increasing in my favor every time I set up another camera. Every time you go out looking for the paranormal, you're increasing your odds of finding something. So, considering that they did over 10,000 cases, their odds should have been pretty high. And with that, I think I'm going to stop for the night and go to bed. So I'm going to scroll through the comments real quick one more time. Super boring. I know I am. No, really. Kind of like Bigfoot. What do you think of Annabelle? We talked about Annabelle earlier in the show. I think it's made up, probably, because there's just no origin for that doll. And it just doesn't make any sense, because they've claimed that it was just a girl, the spirit of a girl, and they claimed it was a demon. And then, nobody ever came forward and talked about their experiences with it. And it's just too much. It's just too fantastic. And the fact that Ed was telling people that someone came in the museum and bothered the doll, and then the person was killed in a motorcycle accident shortly after, that's too far. And there's no evidence that anybody was killed in a motorcycle accident after leaving that museum, because that's something that people would know. And I don't understand why they're so brazen about their lives. Like, really? You think we can't check these things? We can't fact check? Because we can, people, we can. Yeah, definitely Annabelle is definitely bogus, I think, in my personal opinion. Thought my house was haunted. Since my younger brother. Toothbrush in the kitchen. Oh, is this? Ooh. Toothbrush moving around, huh? Further cemented my belief in the Warrens. Great job. No problem. Thank you. You're welcome. I don't know what I'm talking about, Case. I'm crazy tonight. I'm actually really tired. You found out it was a chipmunk? Oh my god. Yeah, it was a little creepy. But it's not glowing eyes. I really believe that that's glasses. Somebody had on glasses and there was light hitting the glasses. So, but yeah, most people think that it's glowing eyes. Super boring. I don't think it's boring. I think anybody that's got a haunting story, it can't be boring. It's supernatural. So it's super. Would you go to that house and sit in the dark? Me? Oh God, I would love to go to that house. And actually, I have sat alone in the dark by myself in so many haunted places, you would not believe it. And that was a long time ago, though. Maybe I wouldn't do it now. No, I'm joking. I totally would. I ain't afraid of no ghost. Interesting topic. Oh, thank you, James. I'm glad you enjoyed it, and you have a good night, too. Yeah, no problem, Sherry. All right, guys. It has been fun. It has been awesome. I hope tonight's show wasn't too much of a mess. Maybe I'll try again to extrapolate on some of the other cases at some point in the future. I actually do want to talk about the werewolf case, but we'll get to that eventually. Maybe in a couple of weeks. Next Monday, we should have a guest. So definitely. If you use Facebook, check out the Facebook page. It's just facebook.com/paranormallycorrect. You can just type in Paranormally Correct and search for it, and I'll pop right up. Definitely keep an eye out for who my guest will be next week, because I'm pretty sure we're going to do something super awesome next Monday night, guys. So, so yeah, you guys have a great rest of your week. Stay safe out there. Don't get abducted by aliens. Do not get eaten by Dogman. And don't get flogged by ghosts and gremlins. And I will see you all very, very soon. Good night, everybody.